Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to my FYBA English Language and Literature elective class. Okay, so yesterday or day before yesterday, somebody requested to inform the class well in advance. In fact, we get our timetable at 5 o'clock. So even we are not sure at what class we are going to have the next day. So there are a number of factors. It's not just timetabling. There are multiple because the exam is going on. University exam. So it might not be possible this week. So I would request you to bear with the way the timetable has been scheduled. So I'm helpless at this moment because the university exams are going on, and you can understand that the staff is not full-fledged because of the restriction by the government, COVID-19. So this is the only reason why we are not informing you earlier, and there is nothing else. Otherwise, we make sure that you get information what you are going to learn in the next class. So whatever unit has been dealt with by the teacher will be continued in the next session, so you get a better idea that what we are going to do in the next session. So last time we talked about introduction to English literature, and we try to understand what literature is, what English literature means, and what is the scope of this paper, and how am I going to deal with that. So we looked at the syllabus that you are going to have this year. That's what we are discussing right now, and that is literary terms, and we'll go through once again if you have missed this session previously. The questions that can be asked from this unit is short notes or one word questions, or you have to give the meaning of the, so it's just 1 mark or 5 marks where questions can be asked from this unit. Besides the examination concerns that you are going to ask later on, these literary terms are very useful in order to write your literature review later on, or whatever discussion that happens in terms of the text that we are going to discuss in the next unit, whether it's a one-act play, novel, or cinematic adaptations, where we are going to talk about plot, character, metaphor, symbolism, and similes, figures of speech in short, and how writers are doing what they are writing, and how to analyze them. That's what literary terms will help you in order to understand these writings better, in order to understand literature better. Okay, so once again, we are going to deal with around 6 hours on literary terms. This is the second session in this unit. And then we will talk about Anton Chekhov, and specifically we'll talk about A Marriage Proposal. It's a one-act play, and I'll provide you in the Google Classroom. If you have not yet joined Google Classroom, please join, because once I start giving you the material, it won't be on WhatsApp, it will be on Google Classroom. So if you have not written to me on my WhatsApp number, please do. And by now, you might have my WhatsApp number. And if you don't have, go to a YouTube channel where I have uploaded one class where you can see my WhatsApp number or email address. So I'll post all the material in Google Classroom, so I can add you, and write your name, year, and subject along with your email address. Okay, so next we'll talk about Jhaverchand Meghane's The Promised Hand, and translated by Ashok Meghani, and then we'll look and actually watch Omkara in sections, and try to understand how it is, what are the ways in which it is adapted, and we'll try to understand it with reference to some of the theories that have been discussed so far. And then we'll look at the guide as well. The version of the guide, film, as well as the novel, I would request you to read both the works, Othello as well as guide. by their respective author before we go on viewing them and try to understand how can we differentiate. Okay, so we talked about allegory last time. We talked about alliteration. We talked about allusion. This was one question, but can you come more on what allusion means? So if you look at this picture, you will find that it's a horse made out of wood, and there is a ladder going into the belly of the horse, and there are wheels which will move the horse front or back. Now, this has a specific relation to a historical event, if anybody can remember. There is a virus also known by this name. Hello, am I audible? Because I have started the session and I think your answers.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So do you recall a name of a virus that can match this picture? You might have heard this 100 times. If I say the word, you will say, oh yeah, we know that. It's called Trojan horse. Now, there is an allusion related to this, and that is when Greeks were undefeatable, the enemies deployed soldiers in the belly of the horse, and the horse was pushed, and the Greeks thought that the enemies have left, and they have left a huge monument for us, and we can place it in our museum. And they were not aware that the belly of the horse has lots of soldiers. So at night, all the soldiers came out of the belly of the horse and started fighting and killing the innocent Greeks, and that's how they lost the battle. This is really interesting symbol for Greek mythology, and it's called Trojan horse. So you see something else and it has a different meaning, and that's what allusion is all about. So we talked about antagonist and protagonist, we talked about archetype, we talked about assonance. Garima gave me interesting example of assonance, which at present it would be difficult for me to go back to my WhatsApp and find out. But thank you, Prima, for that. Then we talked of atmosphere, we talked of mood, we talked up to this level, and now the audience. Okay, now what is the audience? Audience means simply those who are reading the work or viewing the work or listening a speech by anybody. So audience for a piece of literature may be a single person or a group of people to what text is directing towards them. Now, not all the text, not all the reading or speeches are for everybody. Somebody likes Shakespeare, somebody doesn't like Shakespeare. That's okay. I like mythological plays. I like Girish Karnad's plays. That doesn't mean that everybody likes. So there is an audience for a kind of literature. Somebody is up for literature forms like poetry, like me. But I don't like novels because it's too lengthy. I like short stories. It's too short and you get an idea quickly what it is all about. In novel, you have to read all the description and all. It doesn't mean that I don't like, but I prefer. So that is a difference. So for authors as well, if you look at the Chetan Bhagat as an author, who would like him as an audience? Urban people, urban metropolitan population who got their education in English medium, maybe yes. That's how Chetan Bhagat is popular in metropolitan areas. But if you go to rural areas, maybe Premchand is very famous. Maybe Kanayalal Munshi is famous. Maybe local Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam authors are famous, not Chetan Bhagat. So there is a specific audience for each kind of genre as well as the writers. Now, when we talk of audience, we also talk of politics of audience, but we don't want to go into that detail. That's enough. Otherwise, you will say that Rahul Gandhi has a specific audience, and Sonia Gandhi has a specific audience. Then Narendra Modi has a specific audience, and then Communist Party of India has a specific audience. So all the audiences are related to a particular theme, writing, genre, ideology, and so on and so forth. So audience is a group of people or a person, you can say in short. Okay, I have got a chat. Sir, actually I was late for, can you tell me about today's topic? Prince, it's all about literary terms that we are going to talk in a couple of sessions. I'm talking about audience, and I think you may know what audience is, and that's what we have talked. So today we are going to talk all about literary terms, and the next literary term is this: characterization, the characters that we read in and out of literature. So how author is projecting character, how he establishes character. He may describe the appearance, how does the character look, or what does he feel, or what kind of thinking he has. So it's in short, he talks about characters either from the real life or imaginary life. All the characters in Marvel Studios are imaginary. Thanos, for example, or Iron Man, for example, or even Cars. The character in the film Cars is all are fictional characters, not real characters. But when we talk of any literature that is written based on real incidents, for example, Shashi Tharoor writes about his biography, and he may come across characters like Rahul Gandhi or Sonia Gandhi, and he may be projecting them in his work directly or indirectly. Again, those are called characters. Characters means human beings. Not just human beings, they can be animals as well, because animals also play an important role. In some of the naturalistic plays that I have read, and novels and short stories, the tree also becomes a character in the short story. For example, in The Last Leaf by, who is the author? Last Leaf, how can I forget that? Okay, leave it. In that story, I'll remember that I don't recollect the names easily. I'm very selected amnesiac person. Okay, now, so authors try to describe what kind of characters he has chosen for his story. So it is the story which brings characters alive, and it is the character which brings us the story. Right? So we are exposed to characters through dialogue and their action. Dialogue in the sense, the way they talk, what they talk, and what kind of action they perform in whatever literature we are reading. So there is a specific way to characterize the people in stories, in fiction. When we say characterization, we talk of their graphs as well. Yeah, we talk of their age as well, the way they move. I think somebody is trying to say something. Oh, Henry, yes, thank you very much. It happens to me that I forget things, and sometimes I forget the name of the book as well, but that will not stop what I want to convey. Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much, both of you, Neha and what was her name? Tirth. Thank you very much, Tirth and Neha. So the characterization can occur from the beginning of the story till the end. And when we say the author is trying to present a character from A to A, I'm saying just A to A. If it is A to A, and that means there is no change, we talk of flat characters. But if there is a change from A to B, suppose the character is very angry, and at the end of the story, at the end of the fiction, the character changes and he becomes calm, then there is a change in the character. So they are called different types of character. There are different types of character. When we talk of our marriage proposal, we'll talk about it in great detail and how characterization At the moment, you have to just understand that there are different ways the characters have been presented by the author. And again, it depends on the author's choice. So it is the author who creates character. He gives life to the character when he describes their appearance, personality, and their action and the way they talk. Again, very interesting. It is really author's character, not character's author. So we have to remember that it is the author who controls the character, right? Okay. Now, the next literary term is, I think somebody's audio is on, and I would request them to switch it off because there is a lot of disturbances. So if you have your audio on, please switch it off. It is disturbing. Okay, let me see whose audio is on. Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Let's go back to what we were discussing. So we were discussing literary term called blank verse. So we'll talk about different kinds of verses when we talk of poetry as a form, maybe next year. But at the moment, we have to understand what blank verse is. It's an unrhymed lines of poetry, usually in iambic pentameter. Again, these are two different ways in which we can talk of. Iambic pentameter is a kind of meter where iambs connect together and make 5 pairs. We'll talk about it. And unrhymed lines, that means the words don't rhyme either ways, at the end or in the middle or even at the beginning, right? So whenever you see unrhymed words with a particular meter, especially iambic pentameter, it's blank words. And many of the writers chose blank words as their choice of writing. Okay. The climax, again, which is very important to understand how the plot is executed. So it is the point at which the story, the action is at its peak, whether it's an action or emotional aspect of the story, or anything that catches your attention in the story, that holds you to the story. And from there, you can imagine the climax in the sense that it starts with a normal graph line, the curve rises, the curve. Okay, somebody still is. I will ask you to speak. Okay, so climax is a point at which the action or in a story reaches at its peak. It can be emotional, it can be any aspect. So, for example, if I'm talking of, let's say, the film Sholay, the climax is when you hear about the story of the man with thakur, the man with no hands. And that is the climax. And then there is a turn in the story. And there are many points at which the story takes turn, but they are not climax. The climax is that when you are going to have somebody taking the objective of the story. Okay. The next is, can you guess what it is? Here is a literary term, and I have used it as a symbol. So let me unmute everybody, and if you can answer the question. What is that picture about? If you can identify a literary term. Okay. So here it is. It's a cliche. And the expression that has lost its power or original form with the overuse. So we have been using this phrase, it is as easy as pie. So to make a pie is easy, that's what people consider, and it is actually fact. But then it is too much used. So whatever is too much used, you call it cliche. Okay, so these are the example, talking a mile in a minute, and that means talking too fast, and that's too much used, quiet as a mouse. Okay, the next is very crucial to understand that how we make claim in writing. What is the author's claim in the story or fiction, and what you want to prove, whether it's literature or science. We always try to prove something, and this is where we need to understand how authors are trying to prove their point, how the characters are trying to prove their ideas, how they assert themselves, what is their position on a specific issue. Like if you remember the name called Yuyutsa, Yuyutsaha. Does anybody remember the name Yuyutsa or Yuyutsaha? Okay. If you remember, please do write in a chat box, because this character is from Mahabharata, and the character is having a close affinity towards truth. His position in the war of Mahabharata is very clear, and he is the youngest brother of Duryodhana. The name itself suggests Yuyutsaha, ready to wage war for truth. Now his name is asserting his position. So when Vyas is writing, Ved Vyasji is writing Mahabharata, he is making very clear that his position will be inclined towards truth. So when the final bugle is heard, and there was an announcement, ethical announcement, there were these were the people who followed ethics, and not like today, there is no ethics in war. So in this great war, the ethics was that if you want to change sides, you can change your sides, but decide based on truth and dharma. Dharma not in the sense that we practice today. Dharma means your duty. So if you think that your side has no dharma, then you can change sides. So Yuyutsaha, the youngest brother of Kauravas, youngest among Kauravas, he changed his side and he fought against Kaurav, against his own brothers. So he claimed with his death that I am on my side, I am on the side of the truth. So there are characters who will assert themselves and they will claim their position. And this is very interesting, because you have to find out whether the claim is made on the behalf of the writer, or the character himself is making claims, or is author making multiple claims and it is difficult to decipher how the claim is made. This is a very interesting skill and useful skill as well. So whether you are studying literature, drama, or psychology, or journalism, you have to understand how people make claim, how people prove their arguments. If you learn this skill to understand how writers make claim, you learn a lot at very early age, right? So you have to understand what is the story all about, what the author is trying to convey. For example, in a story called Karma by Khushwant Singh, the claim Khushwant Singh is making that whatever we try, however hard we try, whatever we try, the skin of your color will remain the same and the racial discrimination may occur. The second thing he is claiming in the story of Karma is this, that when a person is trying to ignore his near and dear one, the world also will ignore and the karma will return back to him. So this is the claim that the author is making, and we have to understand how this claim can be made. Similarly, there are counterclaim or counter argument. It's an opinion. Now, when I say that Khushwant Singh is making that claim, it is my argument that this is what I have reasoned behind reading the story of karma. I may be wrong, but one has to understand that always the claim has a counter claim, argument has a counter argument. It has always been a case whenever you have a pro, you have a con as well, right? So there are grounds for opposition for everything. If there is a darkness, there is a lightness. If there is a shadow, there is light. If there is heat, there is cold. If there is life, there is death. So the writer may be talking about life, but I may interpret as a rebirth, as a journey towards death. If the writer is talking about death, I may talk about resurrection. I may talk about a reunion in the next level, next world. So there is always, and we have to find out how to get an idea about claim and how to understand the counterclaim or counter argument. Then we have a conflict. If you have a claim and counter argument, if you have a claim and counter claim, then you have a conflict. And without conflict, remember one thing, without conflict, life is so boring. Swami Vivekananda once said, if you are walking on a path where there are no obstacles, change your way, because you are on a wrong path. If everything you get smoothly, I think you have to think again how you get things smoothly, how you get things easily. If things are coming easily towards you, I think there is something wrong. Because when we look at nature, when we look at life, there is a conflict at the beginning. The conflict in giving birth, the conflict when the sprouts are coming out of the earth. And this conflict is always useful. So these conflicts create plot. We'll talk about plot in detail later on, but this is the crucial element that we have to find what kinds of conflict the story is giving us, the writer is trying to give us. And it is from that basic element the conflict gets into the story, and then the author, through characters, try to find out the resolution. The conflict may be of human to human, human to nature, nature to human, or within the nature, multiple conflicts, multiple levels. But then it must have a resolution when conflict is being presented. So when we say internal conflict, that means the character is struggling within himself. So there is a fight between you versus you. If you remember Rahul Gandhi's, not Rahul Gandhi, oh, how can I forget him? Rahul Dravid's advertisement when he was talking about Hutch network. So it's a competition between you and you. Again, the example of Sultan. Sultan ko ek hi aadmi hara sakta hai, wo hai Sultan. So this is what the conflict is all about. Sultan is fighting for himself. He is not fighting for others. He wants to defeat his egoism. And that's where the internal conflict can come in. The external conflict is when you have Ram fighting Ravana, or Krishna fighting Kansa, or the person fighting an element beyond his reach, that is cancer maybe, or let's say from the film Titanic, the conflict is man versus nature. So internal as well as external conflict. Now, in external conflict, you have characters, you have society and nature. So when you watch the film Mulk by I don't remember the name of the director, but Rishi Kapoor acts in that film. So he's talking about his identity. He is Muslim, and the rest of the community is trying to label that he is of different category. That is where the conflict, the external conflict comes in. Somebody has used the chat box. Yes, Anubhav Sinha. Thank you. Thank you, Dev. So external conflict can happen within these characters, among the society and nature. Okay. Any questions so far? I think it's straightforward, all the literary terms. So we'll continue with that. Consonants, again, it's a kind of assonance, but here the consonant sounds are repeated. The fair breeze blew, the white foam flew, the furrow followed free, the rime of the ancient Marian. This is from S.T. Coleridge, Rime of the Ancient Marian. It's a huge, beautiful poem that we are supposed to read somewhere down the line. But that's what, okay, sorry. The consonance is all about. The consonantal sound is repeated in this type of writing. Okay. Of course I will. Of course, Prince, I will. If I'm going too fast, I know because I have to cover a lot of ground. Then there is a contrast to explain how two things differ. So if you want to show the differentiation in characters or in nature or in the story, then you use this term contrast. It's self-explanatory, but you have this compare and contrast technique. So Vibhishan is functioning in a particular way, whereas Ravan is different. Both are Brahmins, both come from the same clan, and still they are different. So there is a contrast, and it explains how they are different and alike, right? So we will use these terms when we talk of characters and the way the author is trying to use them in writings. Then couplets, a pair of rhyming lines, simple. Two lines, couple means two people, couplets means two lines, right? So it can be a rhyming, it cannot also rhyme, so that's not an issue. Shakespeare's sonnets all ends in couplets. So 7 couplets means 14 lines, and that makes it sonnet. So whenever you have a specific number of lines, it will have couplets. Okay, so couplets means 2 lines. It comes from couple. Couple means 2 pairs of things. Okay, diction, it's a word choice. You understand that. And half of these terms you might have understood in your 12th standard English language classes, or even 10th standard. So diction means word choice, the kind of words that you use, the author uses. The author has, you can use any number of words related to a concept, an object, right? So depends what kind of language you would like to use. The favorite example is Shashi Tharoor. He would use a word, I'll use a dialogue, and he would say confabulation, confabulation. Similar, both the words are similar, but he uses that word and I use a dialogue or conversation. So there is a choice of words depending on the author. Where does he come from? What kind of education he has, what kind of audience he has, and what kind of literary command he has over the form. So what characters demand from that particular situation. So diction is dependent on many factors, not just author's choice, but what the situation is all about. Denouement is a resolution of the conflict in a plot after the climax. So what resolution is going to come in the plot, in the story, will be called denouement. It also refers to the action of the story or drama, and majorly this is used in drama. And it's just trying to get things together. there are plots or multiple plots, and there are subplots, and you as an author, you want to bring everything together to conclude the story, to wrap up the story. That's where the denouement comes, and we'll look at how in this play, Anton Chekhov's marriage proposal, where the denouement is and how the plot is having resolution in this. Next is denotation. Definition of a word found in dictionary. Very simple dictionary meaning, literal meaning of the word. ઓકે, લીલા માસીએ જે પણ કહ્યું આપણે એમાં ઇન્ટરેસ્ટ કશું નથી, બરાબર? એટલે જે પણ બેન છે ને એમને આપણે સારી ભાષામાં કહી દઈએ કે હવે તમારા લીલા માસીને એક બાજુ સાઈડમાં મૂકી દો અને ક્લાસમાં ધ્યાન આપો, બરાબર? ઓકે, so denotation means literal meaning of the word. Denote means to mean. Okay, so the word indolence denotes laziness. So that's what simple meaning of the word. So we will try to understand the first meaning of the word written in a fiction, and then we'll try to understand what are the different connotations of the word, because that will allow us to understand what is the meaning of the word outside the dictionary. Because writers write with language, but they mean something else. So what is the figurative language? If the writer is writing from the dictionary meaning, it doesn't make any sense. It's just maybe a manual of a printer or how to operate things. So literature is beyond the meaning of the dictionary. So you have to get underneath to get the meaning of the word, and that is connotations. What are the different meanings? What are the figures of speech? What is the figurative meaning of the word? And that means what is suggested here, what is implied. And if you can go beyond the literal meaning, you will be able to find beautiful ideas the author is trying to explain. We'll look at how different words will give different meaning. For example, the word cool connotes an awesome or exciting thing. Let me give you one interesting example. I'm writing in a chat box and I want you to give me the meaning of this word. You can unmute yourself and you can answer the question. We have just less than 1 minute. Can anybody tell me what is the meaning of this word? If I don't get the meaning right now, we'll talk it in the next session.